Good evening. All right, that's good. I want to make sure you're still here with us. I want to thank you all for being here. Welcome to the Herbert Family University Lecture Series tonight, brought to you from the generous gift from Helen and Jeff Herbert. We want to thank the Herbert family for their generous gift in making this evening possible. My name is Dr. Richard Reddick. I'm the Senior Vice Provost for Curriculum Enrollment and the Dean of the Undergraduate College at the University of Texas at Austin. Tonight we are coming together to explore the knowledge and expertise related to difficult conversations and the importance of discourse that our faculty bring to the 40 acres. Our lecture series will, over the course of 3 lectures this spring, muse and pose questions on this topic that we hope will benefit us all at various points of life where we currently find ourselves. It is our hope that you will find points of connection to reflect on as your time at UT unfolds. Before I introduce our speaker for the evening, some quick housekeeping. Hopefully you scanned the QR code on the slides that you see rotating behind me. We would love for you to send in any questions that you have during the lecture. Once our speaker is finished, we will ask you to stay seated for 5 to 10 minutes for a question and answer session that will conclude the evening. Please do not get up out of your seats until we have finished the Q&A session. And so, I'm so excited to introduce our speaker tonight, Mark Strama. He's right there. So Mark currently serves as the director of the Annette Strauss Institute for Civic Life. The Institute, which is housed in Moody College of Communications, prepares the next generation of civic leaders through education, research, and professional development. As director, he has worked to expand the Institute's focus to local government issues and examining the ways that social media might help repair political divisions. You could use that right now. He teaches the signature course titled Pathways to Civic Engagement, and tonight we will all be his students. Again, it is my pleasure to welcome you to this event. At this time, I will turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Director Mark Strama.
All right. Hi. It's cool to be in a room full of freshmen, to be honest with you. I love teaching the freshman signature course that I teach. And also, I can't help but think about it from the perspective of a father of a senior in high school who was recently accepted here. I went touring colleges with her this summer. I was thinking of it while I was sitting in that seat where Rich is sitting now with Professor Dr. Reddick. Because I learned something about my daughter when we were touring colleges. Every tour we went to, when we went to the presentation, she sat on the front row in the middle. And I learned that there are people who want to sit on the front row in the middle, and then there's everybody, and then there's all the normal people. And we were sitting on the front row in the middle, and then there were 6 empty rows behind us, and then everybody else filled in the rest of the seats. I love the topic that we're talking about here. It is the topic I teach about, both in my signature course and also in an upper division course I teach in the College of Communication called Communication and Civic Participation. And that name doesn't automatically lend itself to civic discourse, but you can't talk about modern politics without acknowledging the polarization and division and conflict that has defined it since the time, Dr. Reddick and I were just talking about, since the time that your generation became political. It hasn't always been like this. I was a politician and member of the state legislature from 2005 to 2013. I got out in 2013, in part, because the conflict and division was making me uncomfortable. My wife and I had young kids at the time, and we decided that we didn't want them to be subjected to that amount of conflict. I mean, honestly, the triggering event was during one of my re-election campaigns when our next door neighbors, who sometimes babysat for our kids, put my opponent's yard sign in their front yard, aimed at our living room. And I thought, that seems gratuitous. it's their right to support whoever they want, but it didn't feel neighborly. That was 2013. And it's gotten only progressively worse since then. And that was the beginning, for most of you, of your political awareness, which is to say the conflict and division that caused me to run from politics is the only political environment most of you have ever known. So we need to address ourselves to that problem. And that's what we'll talk about. So before we even get to that, but partly because of what I just said, let me ask you guys on a scale of 1 to 5 to show me with your fingers, where 0 is things have never been worse, and 5 is things have never been better, and 3 is obviously mid. Raise your hands up and show me where you think we are right now in the epic of human history. Fascinating. Okay, I'm going to perform a little miracle right in front of you, right now, if our technology works. Oh! Whoa. Now watch the good part. Oh! What you just saw, if you spread the course of human history from that wall to that window, the period of time humans could turn a light, flip a switch, and turn the lights on in the dark would be about this much of it, the closest part to the window. The rest of the time, when the sun went down, it was dark. When I do this for my children's benefit at home, I then dramatically go to the sink, turn the faucet, pour myself a glass of water, and drink it. And this is the important part. And I don't die. Again, in the scope of human history, drinking water for 99.999% of our existence was the most likely way you were going to die. Because we didn't understand the role that microbes play in human life. When I talk to people off campus, I've only been a teacher here for 2 years, and so I'm really, frankly, getting to know them. And when people ask me what this generation of students is like, my first response is, they are the most well-hydrated generation in human history. They come to every class with a 32-ounce bottle of water, reusable container, and they got the memo about how important it is to hydrate. Noticed after Labor Day weekend and after spring break, very few came back with sunburns. That's also atypical historically. I bet many of you make up your beds, which is a good practice. Most people don't do it. And the other thing I say about y'all is that you all think the world has never been worse. Never been worse. The highest number I saw when I scanned y'all's fingers was 3. There were a lot of 2s. There were some 0s. And you didn't ask me to clarify the question, and I intentionally didn't. Maybe you interpreted the question as now compared to 10 years ago, not compared to 200 years ago when we couldn't flip a switch and turn the lights on, we couldn't turn a faucet, drink the water, and not die. But it's important for the discussion we're about to have to be able to zoom out, to open the aperture enough to put things in generations of context and not to be too focused on the right now. Because the arc of human history is one of mostly continuous improvement. If you zoom in on that arc at any time, you can see ups and downs. But if you look at the long-term trajectory, if you had been born 300 years ago, your chance of making it past the age of 5 was 1 in 2. That's just 300 years ago. So with that context, which I hope gives you a little bit of a perspective that makes you think, maybe things aren't so bad. Let's talk, oh, and there's something, so this is, a lot of what I'm telling you I learned, and I didn't walk around thinking about how great things are before I read this book, Factfulness. Factfulness is by a guy named Hans Rosling, who is an epidemiologist from Sweden, spent most of his life in Africa combating the spread of Ebola. And what he observed is that he's gone around asking people questions about the human condition, questions about the level of educational access for women, about the level of nutrition, about the levels of extreme poverty. And what he finds is that we're not just often wrong, we're not randomly wrong, we're directionally wrong. People are more likely to be wrong than if you ask the question of a group of monkeys and ask them to throw a banana peel at a wall marked A, B, or C, because they would be random. They'd be 33% right on a 3-option question. We're way more wrong than that. We have a negative bias understanding of the world. And he talks about the reasons for that. One of the reasons is that our information ecosystem focuses on bad news. Good news isn't news. Another reason is, if you look back at this, there are downs and ups on this chart. On any chart, measuring any metric of the human condition, if you zoom in, there are lots of ups and downs. If you zoom out, there is a consistent trajectory. Over time, the fact that decade by decade the world gets a little bit better, there's never a day when a journalist is going to make that a front page story. Every day, yesterday, something terrible happened somewhere to somebody, and that's a front page story. The third thing that leads to this negative bias is that we are a problem-solving species. Natural selection has made us that way. There's good reason for it. If we were content to rest on our successes, we wouldn't still be here. The ones of us who persisted generation after generation are the ones who are never quite satisfied with the status quo. It's endemic in our personalities. Okay. That's a kind of weird picture of a brain thinking about another brain, so that I can introduce a kind of fancy word that will make you sound smart at cocktail parties. The word is metacognition, and it just means thinking about how we think and understanding our cognitive biases. What do y'all see in that picture? What do you see? What do you see? You see a rabbit and you see a duck. Now that you all know that it's possible to see a rabbit or a duck, how many of you see both? If you can't see both, let me just tell you, the duck's bill is the rabbit's ears. If you're seeing a duck, it's looking to the left. If you're seeing a rabbit, it's looking up and to the right. Now, can everybody see both? It's a pretty common optical illusion. Dare I ask, what color is that dress? Okay, I want you to know who the crazy people in the room are. So if you see a blue and black dress, raise your hand. If you see now you can put it down, if you see a white and gold dress, raise your hand. And now that you know that some of you see blue and black, and some of you see white and gold, can you all see both? No. In fact, The people who see it differently than you seem what? Freaking crazy, right? That seems impossible. When I look at that dress, I see a white and gold dress. I've actually seen a picture with better lighting, taken with a better phone. That dress is actually blue and black. And when you see a good picture of it, it's unambiguous, it's indisputable, it's blue and black. If I had the dress here, none of you would question that it's a blue and black dress. It is a blue and black dress. Not knowing that, I still look at that picture, which is backlit and pixelated, taken on an old phone, and I only see a white and gold dress. This picture not only nearly broke the internet 10 years ago last week when it first went viral, not only nearly caused 1 million divorces, it launched a whole new field in neuroscience. And what the neuroscientists, when they studied it, what they determined was that there's actually not enough data in that image for your brain to know what color the dress is. But your brain is incapable of walking around the world with the thought that that is a dress of indeterminate color. So it uses its prior experience, prior beliefs, to interpolate the missing data and guess the color. And then it does something incredible. It makes you believe it with deep conviction, with absolute certainty. So much so that people who see it differently than you, whose brains interpolated the missing pixels differently than you, they seem crazy. And look, if you think that I'm making this up, that your brain will impose a color that isn't there because there isn't enough information for your brain to know what color it is, what color are those strawberries? They look red, right? Your brain knows that strawberries are red. And so what you're seeing there look like red strawberries with a blue filter over them. That color over to the side, that gray color, is what the actual pixels of color representing those strawberries are. There's not a red pixel in that picture. There is no red light entering your lenses. Your brain knows that strawberries are red, and it tells you, without letting you know it's doing so, that it's adjusting the color because it sees that the filter is obscuring the true color of the strawberries. But it hasn't told you so. There is a book about this called How Minds Change by David McRaney. He also has a podcast called You Are Not So Smart. And what it finds is that the same way we replace ambiguity with deep certainty and conviction when we look at ambiguous images, we do the same with our political beliefs. When there is not enough information for us to know with certainty, we interpolate based on our previous experience, values, and we reach certainty about things that we can't be certain of. And they're not, I want to say this, not all political disagreements is there ambiguity about the data. But on a lot of them there are. When you find yourself in intractable conflict, ask yourself, can you really be certain that you're right? Ask yourself if a bit of intellectual humility might not make the level of conflict go down and the level of learning go up. That is a picture of the Oval Office under Lyndon Johnson as president. What's noteworthy, there's a lot to note in that picture, but I only want to draw your attention to one thing, which is the 3 television screens. Can anybody tell me why there were 3 television screens in the Oval Office when Lyndon Johnson was president? Yes?
They wanted different perspectives.
Yes? Yes?
There were 3 television channels.
Yeah, was that what? Yes. So they did want the 3 different perspectives, but there were only 3. By watching those 3 newscasts, the President of the United States would know what every American believed to be true about the country. Was the information the absolute unvarnished truth about the country? Probably not. But it is what everybody believed, which narrowed the range of disagreement a lot, especially when you consider the way that those 3 newscasts had a relative homogeneity of viewpoints. Today is not like that, is it? Today, not only are there millions of possible news sources from which each person gets their news, but each person is getting a news stream that is individually curated for them by an algorithm that is not optimizing for knowledge and truth. What is it optimizing for? Engagement, clicks, time. It just wants you to stay with it. Well, just like, do we always, just like we don't always gravitate to the vegetables and the salad bar at the buffet, we don't always gravitate to the most substantive and authoritative and credible news sources online. In fact, we're kind of terrible at that. It's a lot more engaging to go to some of the more sensational or high conflict things. And when you do it once, the algorithm recognizes, I got one. And it reels you in by giving you more and more of that kind of content. But even if you never do it, but your friend does it, it knows your friends. And it says if your friend liked it, you might too. Your peers do it. People you may have never met, but live in the apartment next door to yours, which it knows. Or go to school with you, which it knows. It will say if it was interesting to that person, you might be interested in it too. That is a difficult information ecosystem when you take into account our blue dress, white dress tendencies. I'll tell you one more story along these lines. There was a sociologist named Henri Tajfel, whose parents and family were killed in the Holocaust. And he spent his life, studying tribalism, trying to understand what could cause Nazi Germany to be capable of such egregious acts against humanity. And so he wanted to understand, look, there's a rational evolutionary explanation for tribalism at some level. Not being part of a tribe for that vast span of human history, from that wall to almost that wall, not being in your tribe was likely to lead to an early, cold, brutish death. We couldn't survive in a state of nature alone. We need each other. So we became tribal. How many dots do you see in that picture? Somebody guess. How many? I'm not grading you, I'm just judging you. Well, I know, I'm not giving you all day to count them. How many? 475, 126. I don't actually know how many pictures are in that. How many dots are in that picture? It actually doesn't matter. Here's what Henry Tajfel did. He showed that picture, or a picture like it, he showed a bunch of dots to a bunch of people in a study. And they guessed. And then he arbitrarily told them, irrelevant to what they had answered, that some of them had overestimated it, and some of them had underestimated it. He was trying to establish a baseline of what type of group identity was such a lightly held identity that it wouldn't cause any tribalism. This was the beginning of a series of studies he planned to do to add more and more commonalities, uniting a group against another group to see at what level they became not only affiliated with the others in their tribe, but hostile to the out group. Amazingly though, when people were arbitrarily told they were overestimators or underestimators, and they weren't, they were just randomly assigned into the two groups, they started to exhibit tribalist tendencies just based on that affiliation alone. So the way he measured that was, he then pulled them aside individually and said he was about to do another study with a whole new group. Some of them will be underestimators, some of them will be overestimators. How much do you think I should pay them? And the members, the people who had been arbitrarily labeled one or the other, didn't just want to pay more to the group that they were identified with. They wanted to pay less to the other group. They wanted what was worse for them more than they wanted what was best for us. That is how powerful tribalism can be. Now add all of these things together. Our cognitive bias toward the negative, our cognitive tendency towards certainty in the face of ambiguity, and our deep-seated tendency toward tribalism. And stir into that pot a news and media environment where everyone is absorbing uniquely, algorithmically curated information that causes us to all see the world differently. I delivered a speech like this to a group of politicians last week, and I told them, I pity you, because you're trying to represent people who all see different colored dresses. They're never going to agree with each other, and they're rarely going to agree with you. The story about tribalism you can read about in a book called Why We're Polarized by Ezra Klein, or you can search on Tajfel and see the original studies. So I'll close with my favorite quote from philosopher John Stuart Mill, who said, "He who knows only his own side of the case knows little of that." I mentioned that I teach all of this in a course at the College of Communication. And so I want to tie all of this up by emphasizing it's not just right to be intellectually humble. I mean, it is. You can't possibly know you're right if you haven't fully explored the other side of the argument. But it's not just right, it's also practical. If your goal is to persuade people to see the world more like you do, they will not be receptive if you can't start by showing that you see the world like they do. If you can't dignify them and their argument by being able to articulate their argument in its strongest possible form, they will not open themselves to the possibility that you might have a point too. Does that trick work to bring all so that you'll always win every argument? No. Does it open up the possibility that people might move closer together through discourse? It does. A lot. So we don't just need to understand the other side of the argument to check our facts, to check our own knowledge. It is the most effective form of persuasion, which is what I think you guys are going to be doing in the course of your enterprise into civil discourse. I've really enjoyed talking to you tonight, and I'm here for questions for as long as they'll let me.
Wow. Give him another round of applause. That was great. Thank you, Director Strama. That was fantastic. So with the Q&A, so just stay seated. We have one really great question that was asked. So this one's for you. Are you ready for it?
Yeah.
Okay. It says, sometimes on our campus, it feels like outside organizations and individuals have more freedom to express their views and opinions on campus than students and faculty of the university. How can we seek to mitigate this and uplift the voices of the university that are sometimes difficult to hear? Easy one.
That's actually a really good question. Like I said, I've only been here 2 years, which isn't enough time to know all the goings on a campus this large. I'm guessing the reference to outside groups, I'm aware that, because students tell me about, there are sometimes some really offensive groups that demonstrate on campus from outside. That's probably what that question refers to, and at the same time, the question is probably suggesting that the environment over the past year, it has felt, for various reasons, like you may not feel empowered to speak your own truth. I don't think there's anything preventing you as a student from speaking your own truth. I don't like comparing it to what I think is being referenced by the outside groups, because those feel like deliberate agitators, not truth seekers, or truth speakers. But I would be surprised if you can't say what you believe. And I don't feel that way as a faculty member, and I hope my fellow faculty don't. I do think it matters how we engage in presenting our beliefs to others. That really is the whole point I'm trying to make. If you can do that in a way that respects the counterpart, if you can do that in a way that tries to understand their point of view as well as your own, I don't know anybody who's not receptive to hearing your point of view if you're receptive to hearing theirs. Now, there are extreme examples. And there are debates about, like, look, let's put it on the table. Last spring's protests caused a lot of anxiety among a lot of students. I was telling Dr. Reddick, my signature course is such a privilege to teach because it's 15 students, and we spent the whole semester bearing our souls to each other. And when those protests started, I came to class and I said, are y'all ready to talk about this? Not about the protests and the free speech issue on campus. Are y'all ready to talk about the claims of the people in Gaza and the claims of the people in Israel and how to weigh them against each other? And in this class, where we had truly bonded with each other and truly gotten to know each other at a very personal level, that issue, students did not want to talk about. And that broke my heart. And I asked them, is it because you think you know all you need to know on the topic? Almost all of them said no. We don't know enough to talk about it intelligently. And I'd be afraid of saying the wrong thing. Which I respect, the intellectual humility implied by that feeling. But this is college. This is the time when you get to ask all the questions, including your own hypothesizing or postulating your own belief and letting people critique it. This is the time for that type of intellectual exploration. It gets a lot harder later. It may feel hard now. It gets a lot harder later in life. So take advantage of the opportunity. Don't hold back your truth, but also be receptive to that of others.
It's a great response. So once again, Dr. Stroma, thank you so much for being here. So I have a couple of notes to share as we sort of wind down. Some of you have signed up for the Beyond Debate small group discussions. If that's the case, please make your way to the right, your right, where Jillian is over there, for pizza and group discussion, group assignments. For everybody else, thank you for attending this evening. Please exit through the doors near the windows. Have a great evening. Thank you for being here, and best of luck the rest of the semester. Thank you, Dean.